I was out in my garden, taking the washing off the line. It was late, after 6 p.m. I'd been watching TV all day and had forgotten all about it. I'd just put the last few socks from their pegs and dropped them into the basket, reaching down to pick it up and carry it back to the house. I looked up, and suddenly I stopped. There, standing in the middle of the patio, was a man, a tall man, gaunt and looking slightly odd, though I couldn't put my finger on exactly what. He wore an old-fashioned grey suit with scuffed grey shoes. He stared at me, his face expressionless. Over the initial surprise, I stiffened up and asked, "Can I help you?" He did not reply, standing motionless before me. His lack of reply made me nervous. I asked again, a bit more insistently, "Can I help you?" Again, he said nothing, his expression unchanging. I stepped forward, placing the basket on the iron table that we used for barbecues during the summer, and then I moved closer to him. "You're trespassing. If you have nothing to say, then you're going to have to leave." I was firm in my words, not wanting to let him know that I was nervous. He still didn't reply, still not having moved from where I first noticed him. Then, something sparked in my brain. I'd not heard the gate. Our gate made a very distinctive noise when someone opened it. It could be easily heard, even inside the house, but I'd not heard it tonight. I was suddenly very afraid. If he had not used the gate, then he must have climbed over the wall, I thought. But why? Our gate couldn't be locked. He didn't have to climb the wall. I would have heard that too. I had no idea how the man had been able to get into the garden without me noticing. I could only guess as to his intentions. Was he here to rob the house? Was he here to hurt me? Kill me? All sorts of thoughts run through my mind. Trying to make sense of it, I did my best to shake off the fear, taking a deep breath and raising my voice. "Sir, please leave or I'll call the police." Unsurprisingly, he did nothing. He just stood there, staring at me. I summoned up all of my courage and stepped towards him, grabbing his arm and pushing him towards the gate. "Alright, out!" I shouted, pushing his stiff form towards the gate, pulling it open and throwing him outside. I got one last look at those cold eyes staring at me before I slammed the gate shut, silently cursing my father for removing the bolt many years ago, the remnants of it sitting there proud, almost mocking me with its uselessness. I grabbed the basket and headed back into the house, locking the door behind me. I heaved a sigh of relief, thinking that it was all over and busied myself with making dinner. I sat down with my pizza and watched a film for the next 2 hours, by which time it was dark outside and the wind was blowing loudly around the house. I headed upstairs, passing by the window that looked out over the communal courtyard we called the square. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a figure standing in the middle of the square. I moved closer to the glass, trying to make it out. It was the man. He was standing there, motionless, just staring up at me. My blood ran cold. My parents would be home in a few hours. What if he was still there when they arrived? Would he hurt them? I ran to my room, grabbing the phone, and dialed my dad's number. "Hey mate, what's up?" came his voice down the line. I launched into an explanation of what had happened with the man, telling that after 2 hours, he was still standing outside the gate, staring up at the house. What the hell am I supposed to do? Should I call the police? My father was a police officer himself, and we lived a stone's throw away from the local station, though at this time of night, it was closed. Yes, ask them to send an officer and move him along. The square is technically still police property after all. I hung up, picking up the phone again and dialing 999. "Hello? You're through to the emergency service hotline. Which service do you require? Police, fire, or ambulance? The one at the other end of the phone asked. Police, I replied. I'll just connect you now, the woman stated. I explained the situation to the police operator, telling her that the man had been trespassing and refused to leave, and that I'd been forced to eject him from our property, but he was still standing outside hours later. I was concerned for my parents, who would be home soon. Don't worry, an officer has been dispatched and will be with you shortly. He will deal with this man and come to your door and tell you when he's been moved along. Stay on the line until the officer arrives. I brought the phone to my bedroom window, looking out at the man standing in the middle of the square. He was staring at me. About 10 minutes passed when I saw the top of a policeman's hat going along the alleyway outside my window. The officer is here, I told the operator, watching the policeman walk towards the man. Alright, I'm going to end the call now. Is that okay? You can call us again if you have any more problems. I sighed, seeing the policeman trying to engage the man in conversation. Okay, I replied to the operator. Thank you. She terminated the call and I put the receiver back in its cradle. I saw the policeman grab the man's arm and lead him off back down the alleyway, releasing him and giving him a push down the street. To my relief, the man complied, skulking off down the street without looking back. I sighed again, as if a huge weight was suddenly lifted from my shoulders. I heard the doorbell ring and I went down to unlock the door, opening it and seeing the policeman standing there on the doorstep, smiling reassuringly. I moved him along for you, sir. Hopefully he won't come back, but if he does, don't hesitate to call us again. Thank you, officer. I smiled back and he nodded, adjusting his hat and walking to the gate, giving a wave as he left. I closed the door and locked it again, going back up to my room and silently thanking any gods who were listening that that man had left. 3 years have passed since then, and I've not seen hide nor hair of the man, though he still occasionally haunts my dreams. I noticed it's starting to rain outside, so I grab the washing basket and head out to get the washing before the line gets wet. As I drop the last of the clothes into the basket and stoop up to pick it up, I look up and I see someone in scuffed grey shoes walking towards me. Every family is dysfunctional to some degree. In truth, there isn't a perfect family. Now, I can't say this for sure, as I don't know every family. But one thing is certain. You must always care for them. This is very corny, I know. But the greatest wisdom is one people know by heart. Sadly, I ignored it. The tragedy started on Wednesday, 2 weeks ago, during my family's cleaning day. This bizarre ritual consists of cleaning the rooms on every Wednesday every week. You may ask why I think this is bizarre. The truth is, many of my family members have some compulsive tendencies, and this is one of the strongest in intensity. Everything is rearranged in every room and cleaned till no trace of dust can be found. Okay, so this is an exaggeration, but you get the point. The problem is that I've had enough of that. Yes, I'm a spoiled brat, but not in this case. I've grown tired of this nonsense, of having my things taken out of their place without my permission, and losing the stuff important to me. It may look like nothing to outsiders, but living in this chaotic state would get anyone sooner or later. Because of this, I decided to play a prank on them. I wrote a small note and put it on the front of my door. It said, "Cursed be the one who cleans or rearranges anything in this room." It's in terrible taste, but I decided to use this because they have a problem with listening to reason. So I decided to use something that would get them scared. I also felt a terrible anger while writing this note. I was practically in a daze. I should have noticed it before, but I ignored it. My family questioned me about the horrible note. I lied, saying I didn't remember writing it. Needless to say, they were frightened. They didn't mess with my room that day. And a week passed. I had something to do in town, so I took my stuff and left. They started cleaning shortly before I left, so I was anxious to see the results of my experiment. I returned home later, and before I entered my room, I noticed that the note had been removed. I entered and found my room clean and rearranged. It seemed their willpower wasn't as strong as I had predicted. I asked my father about my room and he said my aunt cleaned it. He also said she was incredibly scared after she finished with it, so she left quickly. I wondered why she'd be so scared of a simple note. Then again, they aren't very normal. I shrugged it off, and she did return later though. When night came, I quickly fell asleep and started to have disturbing dreams. Nightmares might be more of an appropriate word. In these dreams, everyone was having breakfast together. I would talk to them and they wouldn't reply. I started shouting, but nothing else happened before I woke up. I woke, sweating terribly. The air around me was inexplicably cold. I tried opening the door, but it was stuck fast. No one heard me when I shouted and knocked on the door. The room, even outside of it, was deadly quiet, almost ghost-like. I tried looking out the window, but couldn't see a thing. Then, I got an idea. I would write a note and slide it under my door. I checked under the door, only to see another piece of paper there. I used a ruler to help me reach the paper and looked at it. It was the note I had written before. As I read it again, a sense of irony came over me, and I really wasn't sure why. Suddenly, I felt myself disintegrating. My body was turning to dust and spreading through the room. That was when I realized no one would come to clean the room again. It's easy to grasp the concept of individuality. We are each composed of one mind, one soul, and one personality. And this is a good thing, as we are defined by who we are, whether in a physical or personal sense. The idea of self-awareness, however, comes with the reality that we are virtually always alone. It's easy for one to come to terms with fact, while it's obvious that we can still relate and sympathize with other individuals, even if they will never have a perfect understanding of our thoughts and feelings. More than anything, I'm a daydreamer. I may write and draw to try to speak my mind and flash my creativity to the people around me. But those tools of expression are not first nature to me. It's much easier to lie back and imagine, play out situations in my head, rather than to forcibly generate them on a computer screen at that very second. Instead, I would lie down on the couch and stare into the clouds, plotting a new episode of imagination in my head. It was fairly recently, 2 years ago to be exact, when I learned that this was an awful coping mechanism. I had just arrived home in the first few minutes after the ride from school, absolutely livid. Looking back on it now, it was just a petty squabble with another kid in AP English, resulting in him running away with a nosebleed. But nevertheless, I was frustrated. I lay, prostrate and vented, even talking to myself about how pissed I was. This thought process eventually led to a decision to channel my frustrations through creativity. I decided I would go and form a cohesive narrative of the world I was developing. I figured the feeling of satisfaction from completing such a project would help calm me from any future school-time struggles. I turned over onto my back and stared at the popcorn ceiling of my room, sort of tracing the lines between the bumps of the pattern. I eventually found myself in the planes of my imagination. The feeling itself was overwhelmingly vivid, on the brink of hallucination. Perhaps I dozed off beforehand and this was just a dream. But I still had creative liberty with this familiar world, as if it was a conscious thought. It was warm and temperate. A sunny sky shimmered bright blue overhead, and a mild breeze calmed the slow stowing heat of the day. It was perfect. My favourite kind of weather. It was there that I imagined a castle placed right in the middle of the field. It was a huge stone building, with a babbling pond on the outside that refreshed my ears. I had to go inside to explore. The first room from entering the door was simply a parlour. Dust trickled down from every part of the ceiling, and light filtered through the windows, making it almost seem as if heavenly beams were shining through the glass. There were 5 or 6 ornate circular tables, with accompanying high-legged chairs scattered throughout the room. Even if this room felt dusty, old and empty, it was still relaxing. The only parlour guest I would worry myself was me. I was greeted by a woman in beige, puffy dress and a top hat. She took a seat at the table farthest from the entrance and signalled me over to sit with her. I looked around for one last time to get a good idea of the room and joined her at her station. Conversation began almost immediately. "Heard somebody got on your nerves recently," the lady said. I knew it was in my mind, therefore there was no surprise that she knew my recent past. "Tell me," she continued, "what made you angry?" "I can't stand when people try to take advantage of me," I told the lady. I decided that she looked like a Cassandra. Somebody just came in and tried to join me, to get credit for work that I was putting into a presentation. It's not fair. I told him to go away, but he didn't listen. He kept sitting there and pretending to be interested while I slaved away. He didn't really care though. Only 5 minutes after explaining my process, he just whipped out his phone while I carried the rest of the weight. I finally told him to go away, but he wouldn't listen. I asked again and again, and he still refused, mocking me more and more for trying to weed him out. It came to the point where he was physically taunting me. So, I finally just grabbed his scrawny little head and slammed it against the table. I was mad as hell, but it felt good. Am I a bad person for taking pleasure in revenge like that? Cassandra shook her head. I think it's the right action to take to defend your well-being. You were trying to protect your credibility and perceived work ethic with the project. So at least I don't feel like you're a bad person for expressing your displeasure. You were merely asserting yourself. After being reprimanded by both my parents and the teacher, it was such a relief to hear somebody validate my actions instead of refusing to look at them from my point of view. The anxiety in my shoulders eased a bit. She looked at me again. "Do you have anything else you need to confess?" she asked. "No," I smiled. "But I can say, after hearing that, I'm a bit relieved. I wouldn't want any grumpiness to interfere with my interpretation of this matter anyway." Cassandra smiled in return. I could tell she was looking after me. Whether she was some sort of personification of the justification of my own thoughts, or just a motherly figure I made up. I could still use more people like that in my life. Ones that would talk out my issues instead of getting angry and flaring them up even more. She curtsied and handed me the key to exit through the other side of the parlour. She led me towards a very small iron door beyond a velvet curtain. But she hugged my shoulders and put the key in the palm of my hand, returning to a chair to read a book lying on one of the tabletops. The door was a shocking transition from the bright, welcoming environment of Cassandra and the dusty parlour. It was merely a tall, narrow, iron corridor that extended out in multiple directions. There were lamps scattered meters apart, gave the iron room a dim red landscape, but the sultry heat somehow escaped from outside into this labyrinth. It was a complex, abyssal maze oven that I felt tasked to explore. Even if this place did look nightmarish, It was there to drive off strangers. Anyone that would dare to try to invade my kingdom. So I knew there had to be a light at the end of this tunnel. I just wish I had known the direct path to the next room. Thus, I journeyed through the crimson, metal corridor, and found myself getting lost in the various twists and turns of the hallway. More and more, I moved through this room. There was no other sign of life. At this point, I really wish Cassandra would have followed me in, or that I'd asked her. But at this point, I was probably too far away from the entrance for her to hear me. The corridor was made up of multiple twists and turns. Every footstep clinked and echoed throughout the room, which eventually led to a sort of audial distortion. I was beginning to fall into a jittery, claustrophobic haze, as a collection of reverb made it almost impossible to tell how long or short a part of the hallway was. That was until I found myself at the very end of the corridor and saw a little blonde girl in a tank top and shorts huddled with her head buried in her arms. She looked a bit like Cassandra, except much younger and wearing modern attire. She lacked Cassandra's Victorian accent as well. "You came here too?" she asked. "Yeah, I'm looking for the next room. Cassandra sent me along this path." "Same here." She finally looked up. There were imprints above her eyebrows and on her cheekbones, as if somebody kept a vice grip around her eye. I was a bit shocked, but I tried to address it as calmly as I could. "Someone hurt you?" I rubbed the area around my eye, tried to give a hint as to what I was on about. "Oh, this? No. I just did that out of stress. It sort of helped to squeeze my head. I was so nervous and wrapped up with trying to find my way out of the cavern that I had to let my anxiety out somehow. I kept doing that for a while, so I guess that's why there are marks. I gave up on finding the next room though. It wasn't worth the effort and the stress. So, I decided just to sit here." "Why wouldn't you want to continue? You want to come with me? I'm sure I can find the path. Even if you do get nervous, I'll be there to talk you down from the stress." I let out my hand and helped the girl up. I didn't feel a deep connection with her as I did with Cassandra, even if she was my creation. I didn't consciously understand why I would ever make somebody so hopeless and sad. She stood up with me, but I could tell she was uneasy. Although I understood how hard it could be to make a mental shift from giving up to trudging on. It was a complete paradigm shift, so I didn't expect her to be completely trusting of my plan. There was always the probability of me giving up as well, and then we'd both be stuck in a claustrophobic dead end, sulking about our failures. "My name's Mercedes, by the way," the girl said unsurely. "Thank you for walking with me." More and more, we explored the hallway, with barely a clue of where we were going. But I found a trick for getting through the labyrinth. I stopped with her for a second, and heard an ominous humming, like white noise, filtering through the room. "Hold on," I whispered, as not to cause an echo. "Let the footsteps die down a bit. Don't you hear that buzzing? I wonder if that's coming from where we're supposed to go." She thought for a second. I didn't think I noticed it until now. But if we're going to follow that, we need to shuffle. It'll reduce the noise and make it easier to trace the source. I noticed, as she was explaining her plan, that she perked up a bit from her negative tone. I could see, as soon as she had some solid evidence of possibility to grasp on, she took it and regained her confidence. She was needing reason beyond doubt to be optimistic, it seemed. Once she had that reason, she was ready to throw caution to the wind and pursue her goal. She just needed an excuse to chase the ending she wanted. "So," I asked, "you live here?" "Not in the manor. I was invited in by a lady. I live close though." "Ah. I was the one who built this place. I don't know the ins and outs of the buildings though, but I thought it up." "That's odd. You don't even know your own home?" Well, I wouldn't consider it my home. It's just... I decided not to tell her that I knew that this was a lucid daydream. She would either think I'm crazy, or it would mess with the fabric of this world. It's just like... I like to come here a lot when I need to get away from the daily grind. The shuffling led to more twists and turns in a claustrophobic hall, but we knew we were getting pretty close to the exit, as not only did the white noise get louder and louder as we approached, but the sound itself became clearer and clearer as we slipped along, turning into piano music. We finally reached an exit, from which was a blaring, calming melody, as if there was a loudspeaker behind the door broadcasting a piano concert. I hugged Mercedes when we finally arrived, opening the door to let her in first. She was stuck here longer than I was. She deserved to see what was inside more, regardless if it was my world or not. I didn't hear any sort of reaction from outside, so I stepped in and gaped at what I saw. It was some sort of indoor courtyard, complete with a garden, multiple waterfalls scaling the enormosity of a tall chamber, and a tall figure playing music on a piano. It was hideous, nearly 7 feet tall with sickly blue skin. It was decorated so oddly that I couldn't help but be more amazed than fearful. It wore white cloth around its waist, almost as if it was being painted on the wall of an Egyptian pyramid. But the creature had a gold and cone-like neck piece as well. When it looked over at Mercedes and I, we were greeted with a horned but completely bandaged face and a bright red sun pattern on the inside of the cone. It stopped playing, the reverb of the music fading almost instantly, and it jumped in front of Mercedes and I. It only took one swipe of my arms to knock Mercedes out of the way, and it went straight for me, grabbing my neck. Suddenly, the beauty of the room faded to blackness. The creature too faded away into a light blue blob of light. I could hear, "Oh my God!" from the direction that Mercedes was knocked away. It felt like the whole world was shaking. I could feel sweat from my brow as I became severely disoriented. It almost felt like I was alone in some sort of abyss. I felt warmth, almost giving me a bear hug from behind. Even though I was scared, I confided in the warmth and allowed my being to fade away into the warmth, in hopes that the abyss would fade away with the feeling. Luckily, I was right, as I found myself awake, sitting upright as my parents looked at me with distressed expressions. Is something wrong?" "Come on," Mum replied. "We're going to the hospital." I sort of laughed a bit. Who's got sick? They didn't answer my question at first, but they hurried me along to the infirmary anyway. That's when I heard the news. In my near hallucination of a daydream, I'd had a seizure. Apparently I'd knocked my head against the backboard multiple times, which caused a minor concussion, but I was unconscious through the whole event. I didn't even remember having a headache through the course of the whole fiasco. It's funny how things work. We have giant metal vehicles that fly through the air. We have HD video that you can carry in your pocket. We have music that can be accessed at any time from any device using touchscreens. When something like this happens, something so stupid, something so simple, there's nothing to be done. Nothing can be done, even with our advances. I woke up 3 weeks ago in this place. It's a medium-sized room with concrete walls and a floor and ceiling. In spots, the concrete is stained and cracked. A single light bulb hangs from the ceiling, and sometimes it flickers. It's not a very powerful bulb, but enough to see by. I woke up next to a woman. I didn't recognize her, but that didn't matter. I didn't know where I was. I didn't even know how I'd gotten here. There didn't seem to be any doors or windows or openings of any kind. Just a concrete box with me and a sleeping woman in it. I woke her up after a few moments of dazed confusion. She didn't scream, which was my worry, and instead, asked questions calmly. "Where are we?" she asked. "I don't know." "How did I get here?" "I don't know." "Who are you?" I smiled. Finally, a question I could answer. "I'm Tom," I said. "Tom Green. I woke up here just a minute ago. I was hoping you'd have an idea about it. But since you don't, well, you may as well get acquainted. You know my name? What's yours?" I stuck out my hand. She shook my hand. "I'm Melissa," she replied. "Melissa Dobbs. Last I remember, I was..." She froze and creased her eyebrows. "Did you hear that?" I listened, but I didn't hear anything. I shook my head. "What was it?" I asked. "It sounded like... I don't know, a thump?" We sat in silence for a few minutes, listening for another noise. There was nothing as silence, as long as we sat there. After so long, I just shook my head. "I don't think there's anything there, Melissa," I said. "If you did hear a sound, that means that we're close to the surface." "The surface?" she repeated. "What do you mean, the surface?" "Well, the way I figure it, we're probably underground. Where else would someone keep a concrete box? Another thing I'm wondering is how they even got us in here. It all seems like a dream, you know?" I sighed and leaned my back against the wall. This couldn't be happening. Not really. "I know what you mean," Melissa said. "It just doesn't seem real. This doesn't just happen. This can't just happen. This time I heard the noise too. It was like a thump, but a squishy thump. Like if you hit an animal with a heavy object. Images of bleeding animals flashed in my mind. Pictures of infants being hit with hammers and baseball bats. I almost jumped. I was so surprised. Why would I think that? That wasn't normal. None of this was normal. This place, that sound, these thoughts. None of this was right. "Did you..." "Yeah, I heard it," I interrupted Melissa. I started asking if she saw things, but she would think I was crazy. Being here was making me a little stressed. Sure. Crazy? No, and I wouldn't let her think that. Melissa and I have spent the rest of the day discussing the situation and listening for these noises. It seems that they came at regular intervals, once every 10 minutes or so. I thought maybe we were near an automatic machine. Sometimes when the sounds came, I would have the flashes of terrible things. It was disgusting and wrong. But it happened. I couldn't help it. I wondered if Melissa had the flashes, but I didn't dare ask her. If my only companion thought I was crazy, well, I didn't think it would end well. We had thought it was some sort of hostage taking at first. We thought that we'd been taken captive by criminals. That's what we'd decided. It was a normal assumption. About 30 thumps into the day though, our thoughts changed. We were hungry. If the thumps were really coming in every 10 minutes, then 30 thumps meant we'd been awake for 5 hours. I could hear my stomach growling, and I once even heard Melissa's. We were thirsty more though. My throat was sore and dry, but we had no water or food. We were talking about what we'd do when we get out of this box when it happened. The interviews, the books, and maybe even the movies that would come. We could both get rich off this. We tried to remain positive like that. Suddenly, everything went black. Felt like only a second, and I didn't even realize my eyes had closed until I opened them. Melissa and I woke at the same time. We were confused. Somehow we'd blacked out at the exact same time, and woken up at the exact same time. "Food," Melissa whispered. "There's food and water." She was staring in the corner of the room, where before there had been nothing. But now, there were 2 trays with food and water on them. My stomach rumbled. I didn't care where they had come from, or how we blacked out. "Let's eat," I said, grabbing our trays. "We can talk about it in a few thumps." Melissa actually laughed. "Funny how the way we measure time can change just like that," she said, grabbing her food. "But I guess it's just as good as minutes and hours." Food was good. Warm. Steak and potatoes, a scoop of ice cream for dessert, a litre bottle of water to drink. The steak was pre-cut for us, so no knives. The forks we were given were dull. Very dull. No way we could hurt anyone with them. Not that we'd be able to regardless, since it seemed that they could induce loss of consciousness whenever they wanted to. I got the feeling that once we were done eating, we'd just black out again and the forks and trays would be gone. We ate in silence, and then my guess was confirmed. We lost our trays and our forks, and again, we were just in an empty concrete box. We never actually talked about it. We kept busy talking about other things. After another 50 or so thumps, we went to sleep. It was hard at first to sleep with the thumps, but as with anything, you grow accustomed to it. You grow accustomed to the thumps and the flashes and the blackouts, just as people grow accustomed to planes, phones and iPods. This is adaptation. This is evolution. I don't know how long we slept, but every day there seemed to be less time between each thump. Each day though, the food seemed to get a little better. The first day's food was good, but it seemed bland. Each day, the food tasted better, as if a reward for losing time between thumps. This is conditioning. By day 10, there was barely any time between thumps. The food was delicious. We couldn't get enough. Melissa and I got along well enough too. We were becoming pretty big friends, and around day 5, we started having sex. We didn't love each other, but we were both adults. We wanted something to keep us busy and entertained. Why not sex? Day 12 though, things took a turn. They went bad. We were eagerly awaiting lunch. We were ready for the blackout, ready to delight at the delicious food we'd come to expect. We weren't even thinking about escape. We weren't thinking about anything. Thumps, flashes, food. Thumps, flashes, food. The flashes had gotten worse though. So much worse. And the thumps came so fast now. The flashes were in my head all the time. Babies, flayed open and dead. Dogs, limbs severed and laying pools of blood. Cats with their eyes pulled out and their organs ripped from their abdomens. Just animals. Dead animals. Their lives that had been so important before, now useless. Now nothing. Just a heap of bloody regret. This is my future. This is the death of all. Thump. Darkness. When I awoke, I didn't smell food like I was used to. Melissa was already awake, crying. "What's the matter?" I asked her. "Why are you awake already?" "I didn't fall asleep this time," she whispered. They came in. They came in straight through the wall. They were so hideous. They... She started to sob. "Calm down, Melissa," I said. I went to her and put my arm around her. She latched onto me weakly. "Tell me what happened." "They don't have mouths, Tom," she cried. "They're not human. But the thumps come from their heads. We don't hear them with our ears, Tom. I never noticed before. But we hear them in our heads. You understand? He didn't bring food. They said that they'll keep bringing food from now on, but not today. They tried to tell me something else, but they had stopped thumping to talk to me. Once the thumping was gone, I didn't hear. I didn't want to. Begged them to stop, to bring it back. They stopped talking and they left. This is necessary. I held Melissa until she stopped crying and fell asleep. I thought about the changes we had now. I was trying to comfort her. But all I could think about was that the flashes had stopped. I hadn't realized until that moment because I was so used to the flashes accompanying the thumps that I'd given myself flashes. But they weren't coming anymore. Not really. Something had changed since mealtime, and it made me almost uncomfortable. I could understand Melissa panicking when the thumping stopped now, though I didn't think I would have freaked out that badly. Melissa was still crying. "I'm sorry, Tom," she mumbled, pushing her face into my chest. I could feel her tears seeping through my shirt. I should have been able to talk to them. But the thumps, it's so strange when they're gone. I'm used to them now. I understood. I understood perfectly. We spent the rest of that day solemnly, talking not about what we would do when we got out, but how we could get out. Things weren't normal. The thought that we might one day get out was beyond us now. We accepted that. We could live like this, at least for a while. Then, one day, maybe in a month or a year, we might use our forks and dig into our wrists. If they have thumps in heaven or hell, whatever lies beyond. We got food the next day. The thumps continued, and the flashes remained silent. The food was better, and life was good again. Melissa, though, she was shaken. Maybe it was seeing our captors that had her so on edge. Maybe they put something in her head. Flashes, I thought. Is it possible they left my head and went to hers? Crazy, but crazier things have happened here. Every day, Melissa got more nervous, more agitated. I couldn't understand. I tried to talk to her about it, but she wouldn't answer my questions. She just looked at me and shook her head. "Nothing's wrong," she would say. "I'm just tired." This is denial. It happened on day 20. We fell asleep. We woke up and ate our food. We went about things as usual. I didn't know. If I had, I would have done something. Suffering alone is 1,000 times worse than suffering with a friend. I was finishing my dessert, and Melissa did it as quick as lightning. She stabbed herself hard in one wrist, then the other. Then she shoved it in her mouth, jammed it in her throat, pulling and pushing and grinding it in there, trying desperately to kill herself. End it. One wrist was bright red, but it hadn't drawn any blood. The other, she'd stabbed harder. Much harder. And it had holes in it. Holes were pretty deep. Leaking. Pouring blood. Blood was trickling out of her mouth. And when I throw my food down and reach out to stop her, she kicked me in the chest. I fell against the wall. And she just kept stabbing, cutting, choking with the fork. I didn't even realize I was screaming. Thumps had joined together by this point, making constant noise. And it was hard to hear over. Eventually, she slowed and tried to force the fork down her throat. She gagged and choked and retched, but it didn't come out. I got to her, pushed her arms away and reached in. But it was far down by this point. Too far. My only companion, dying. She died quickly. Between the blood and the choking, I don't know what killed her. I didn't care. I cried the rest of that day. Felt like doing the same thing. Thought maybe I would. The next day. Maybe I'd join her again. At least I won't be alone. The next day, however, didn't work out like that. I waited and waited, and eventually the blackout came. I was eager to kill myself after a delightful meal. I just hoped I didn't mess it up. I'd hate to be on the floor, half dead, pissing and shitting myself alone for who knows how long. Fortunately, I didn't have the opportunity to mess it up. I woke up outside. It was dark. This wasn't right. No, I whispered. No one was in sight, but I could see the lights of a town in the distance. I was out. I'd made it out of my concrete prison. No. This is panic. This is change. I'm not ready for this. The thumps were gone, but things had changed. Adaptation, conditioning. The thumbs were gone. The flashes were back. Evolution. I wasn't used to the silence. It was driving me mad, and the flashes didn't help. I knew what would make the flashes go away though. The thumps. They would keep the flashes at bay. Make me comfortable again. That's all I needed. And they had been teaching me how to make the thumps. They'd been teaching me since day one. I just had to. I grimaced, not wanting to think about it. But I needed the thumps. What did I have to lose anyway? My only companion was gone. I stood and headed for the town in the distance. Post 1. The following was a blog post by John Goodman, posted on the 17th of August 2011. Included with it was a download link to $1.wav. The file in question has been converted to OGG format so it may be uploaded to the wiki. Goodman mentioned in the post that he would be doing extensive research on the mystery surrounding this file. If he reports anything back, it'll be posted here. After my computer got burnt to a crisp in a lightning storm, I was only left with my old computer. Fortunately, I had everything from my destroyed computer already backed up onto USB drives and CD-ROMs. My old computer was running Windows 98 and desperately needed an OS upgrade. It was time to search online for a new OS install disk that was an affordable price. You might ask, why not just get a new computer? I would have, but because of the crappy economy, I really didn't have the money to do so. So my only other option was to upgrade my old one. Anyways, I searched around eBay to see if anybody was selling a copy of Windows XP at an affordable price. There was no way my computer would be able to handle Windows Vista or 7. So, I would just have to go with XP. Lo and behold, somebody was selling a full Windows XP clean install disk for only $1.45. Nobody else was bidding on it, so I placed mine. Even after I'd placed my bid, nobody else did. Needless to say, I won the disc with nobody else challenge me. A few days later, I received the disc in a white envelope. I opened the envelope and pulled out the disc. It seemed just like any other XP bootable disc. I turned on my old computer and popped it in, and installed Windows XP as one normally would. While I waited for it to install, I popped some popcorn, took a dump and watched some television, occasionally checking the progress of the installation and responding to dialog boxes, entering the registration code, etc. Finally, it finished installing, and I could use the computer. The first thing I did was transfer everything I had backed up from my destroyed computer to the old computer. CD after CD, USB drive after USB drive. And finally, I got everything from my old computer the way I wanted it. I decided to randomly browse around the computer for a little bit, before I turned it off and got ready for bed. This random browsing led me to the C Windows Media folder. Then I noticed a file in there called $1.wav. I didn't put the file on the computer, so I assumed it was installed along with the other files in the folder. But I realized I didn't remember any such file ever being included with Windows XP when I had it on my destroyed computer, before I upgraded it to Windows 7. Curious, I double-clicked the file to open it. It was a very peculiar file. All I heard when I opened it was some weird static noise, almost as if it was some extremely distorted song. The file was just 4 solid minutes of this weird sound. Kinda creeped me out. I mean, it was nighttime, with my sleeping dog being my only company, and I find a file on my computer that I'd never put there, and it certainly wasn't part of the original XP installation. And all it is 4 minutes of weird static noise. Furthermore, it's in a system folder. Thinking it might be a virus of some sort, I scanned the file. Behold, one Trojan came up. I had no clue where I'd gotten it from. I'd barely been on the internet at all since Windows XP fully installed. Suddenly I realized I'd seen a file with this name flash for a split second on the screen, as the disk installed all the system files. I could only come to one conclusion. The disk had been tampered with. I decided to delete the Trojan, delete $1.wav, and do a full system scan with both my antivirus programs, Malwarebytes and Anti-Malware, and Microsoft Security Essentials. It was going to take a crapload of time to finish scanning, so I decided to go to bed while I waited. I still felt a bit mad that I'd went through all that time to finally get my computer set up and upgraded the way I wanted it, only to find out the install disk had been tampered with. I woke up the next morning, ate my breakfast, took a shower, brushed my teeth, and then went into my computer room. I sat down at my computer and turned on the monitor, which I had turned off last night before I went to bed. I couldn't believe what I saw. My desktop background had been changed to a picture of a dollar bill. There were 2 errors saying that my antiviruses had crashed, along with a bunch of other blank error dialogues that were all titled $1.wav, with a single OK button. Every icon on my desktop had been replaced with a shortcut to $1.wav, even the recycle bin. My start button now said $1.wav, and the usual flag icon was replaced with a $sign. When I clicked the start button, or in this case the $1.wav button, to bring up the $1.wav menu, every icon there was also replaced with $1.wav. The administrator name was changed to $1.wav, and the account picture was that of a dollar bill. I clicked don't send reports, both the errors saying Malwarebytes and Microsoft Security Essentials had crashed. I then clicked OK on each $1.wav error box. Okay, the screen was cleared. I tried to reopen my antivirus programs, but they gave me a blank error titled $1.wav. I clicked OK on those. I went to the $1.wav menu and clicked shutdown. But I just got the familiar clunk error sound. Tried the power button. Nothing happened. Finally, I just unplugged my computer and it shut off. I plugged it back in, I booted in safe mode and tried opening the antivirus programs there. When I did, my computer made the weirdest noise ever and abruptly powered off. I tried pressing the power button, but nothing happened. It didn't even wear up. That freaking virus had completely destroyed my only remaining computer, and I hadn't even got it from a website or anything. It come with my operating system. Well, that was that. I had to go get some things from the grocery store, so I left the house along with my dog. I've yet to earn enough money to buy myself a new computer. I do everything computer related on a friend's laptop that he generously let me borrow when I need to check my email, do something on my bank account, or anything really online. I'd use that same laptop to type up and publish this story to the internet, along with $1.wav, which I'd gone through and manually removed the malicious coding from. After a certain cryptic message I read talking about some last evidence that will have to be destroyed if I share it with anybody, which you'll read about in just a moment, I've decided to research as thoroughly as I can about the mysterious $1.wav until I've figured out the sinister mystery that surrounds it. How did I get back $1.wav after my computer was destroyed, you ask? Well, when I got home, my dog's ears perked up, and she began growling menacingly. She followed a scent into the computer room. Everything seemed normal. However, when I looked where my second destroyed computer was, it wasn't there. Everything else was still there, but the computer was gone. I thought of a robbery, but who would want an old computer that doesn't even boot anymore? I also noticed the tampered with XP install disk I'd gotten off eBay was missing as well. In its place was a different disk. It was a white CD-ROM with something written off in green Sharpie. I picked up the disk and read, "This is the last remaining evidence of that I know of. Keep it secret, or I'll have to destroy it too." I glanced down at the table the disk had been sitting on. Where it had been was a single dollar bill. It wasn't damaged or crinkled in any way, unlike most dollar bills. It was in absolutely perfect condition, as if it had just been made. I took the disc and the dollar over to my friend's house, the one that has let me use their laptop. I explained how both my computers were destroyed. He agreed to let me borrow it whenever I needed to. So, I got on the laptop and put the CD in. On the CD was just one file, $1.wav. Post 2. On August 26, 2011, John Goodman made another blog post regarding his continuing research of $1.wav. Hey everyone, it's me again. So you all remember that $1.wav crap I posted about a week ago or so, right? Well, like I said, I did some research on it. Simply searching $1.wav on Google yielded no results. I asked on a message board about the file, but nobody had seemed to have heard it before. That is, until I got a reply from some guy saying he knew of the file, and he had bad times with it. It went as follows. Oh, don't even remind me. $1.wav? It's amazing how much trouble a 4-minute sound clip of heavily distorted music can cause. It was years ago. Some person on Craigslist was selling a computer with Windows XP already installed in it. At the time, Vista was still in beta, and 7 didn't even exist yet. I went to her house in Cleveland to pick up the computer. I brought it home and turned it on. I noticed a WAV file in the C Windows Media folder, entitled $1.wav. Curious, I opened it and listened to it. It was nothing special, perhaps a little creepy, but it didn't interest me. I closed it and went to the bathroom. I came back to the computer, and I could not believe what I saw. Everything was changed to dollars or some crap, and a bunch of error messages titled $1.wav. I tried using my antivirus to fix whatever it was, but it just wouldn't open. I tried turning off the computer, but it wouldn't turn off, no matter what. The only thing that worked was unplugging it. Tried to boot in safe mode and use my antivirus there, but upon trying to open it up, my computer made this bizarre noise and shut off, and refused to turn back on. I don't mean refuse to boot back into the OS, I mean it just literally would not power on. It was as if it was unplugged. The next day, my computer was gone, with just a single dollar bill in its place. I know it sounds insane, and you probably won't believe me unless you had a similar experience with the file yourself. Cleveland! eBay had told me that the item location was Cleveland, Ohio. I now had a new mission: track down the person that sold me the install disk. I replied to him saying that I'd indeed had a very similar experience, and requested he give me the exact address of the woman who sold him the computer, as I wanted to have a little talk with her. I probably sounded like a stalker, but I didn't really give a crap. I needed to figure this out. Surprisingly, the user actually sent me the address of the woman. Living in Ohio myself, Cleveland wasn't so far away. So, me and my dog got in the car and drove off. We arrived at a small yellow house that could only be the home of a woman who sold me the install disk. We walked up to the front door and rang the doorbell. A woman almost instantly answered the door. She seemed to be an elderly woman, short and stout with white hair tied up in a bun. Then I looked into her eyes. Oh, those eyes. They seeped through me and into my soul, hungrily examining it, seeing if I was suitable to feast upon. I almost sprinted back to my car and drove off right there and there. I couldn't. I had a mystery to solve. "Why, hello, John Goodman," said the woman, in a menacing voice that sent shivers down my spine. My first thought, dear God, she knows my name. God, please help me. My dog growled threateningly at the woman. It took all my courage to finally sput her out. "Look, I don't have time to be fooling around. What is $1.wav, and why did you put it in my XP install disk?" "Oh, I can't tell you that," cackled the woman, whom I was certain no good. "Why not?" I countered angrily. "Because," said the evil woman. "However, I can tell you this. Be wary in the days that follow, for $1 will haunt until all is hollow." And before I could say another word, the woman shut the door on me, cackling wickedly. I had no other choice but to walk back to the car. Along the way, a man came by and asked me, "What were you doing over there?" "I was talking to the woman that lives in that house over there," I replied. The man's expression became concerned. "Nobody has lived in that house for over 10 years. I looked to the house, but instead of the bright, yellow cherry house that I'd seen when I arrived there was a crumbling, abandoned foundation with a wooden plank nailed to the front door saying, 'Condemned' in green letters. But I was just talking to an elderly woman that lived there a minute ago," I argued. All of the colour drained from the man's face. "Elderly woman?" "Yes," I said. "You know, with her hair all tied up in a bun and whatnot." "The last person that lived there was an elderly woman, always having her hair tied up in a bun. But she's dead." So, I didn't actually find out much of anything new about $1.wav, but apparently it was created by a ghost. Interesting, but it's no laughing matter. I realized that the moment I saw that dang woman out the corner of my eye, giving me that frickin' soul-devouring stare like a smiling maniac. When I focused on her, she disappeared. Then, I proceeded to sprint out of the room and hide under a blanket for the rest of the night. When I dared to go back into the living room, a dollar bill lay on the floor where the woman had been. Post 3. On August 29th, Goodman updated the blog again with yet another report about his research on the ominous $1.wav. It's official. That old hag is stalking me. Since my last post, I've been catching glimpses of her out the corner of my eye. It's always with that soul-devouring stare and demented smile. She always vanishes as soon as I focus on her though, and it always has to be at night when it happens. Each time I get the heck out there and hide under a blanket for the rest of the night. When I dare enter the room again, there's a dollar bill where the woman was. I've actually collected all the dollar bills she left for me, beginning with the one that came with the last evidence disc, into one wallet. I've gone 3 days straight without sleep because of this crap. In the most recent incident, she was even holding a bloody knife. That was encouragement for me. I packed up a few things, and me and my dog piled into the car and went to my friend's house. Unrelated, but I haven't told you my dog's name yet, have I? Her name is Coco, as in chocolate cocoa. Anyways, as I was saying, I told him everything that had happened. I'd kept it a secret because I figured I'd keep him sane, but at this point, I really had no other option. I told him about $1.wav, the old hag that seems to want to kill me for some reason, etc. I expected him to say I was crazy and call a mental institution, but miraculously, he actually believed me. And I guess he knew that I wouldn't make crap like this up. So, I'm going to be staying at his place until the situation blows by. Post 4, posted August 30th, 2011. Tonight, my friend glanced out the window, and all the colour drained from his face, and Coco growled menacingly at it. I looked out the window and saw it. The blasted old hag. She stared into the room from outside the window with that soul-devouring stare, and that same demented smile. And she disappeared. We didn't need any more encouragement. We pulled down those blinds and nailed boards to every window in the house, as well as the front and back doors. I don't think we'll be going outside for a while. Post 5, Posted August 31st, 2011. I went on my friend's laptop and checked the forum thread I had posted asking about $1.wav. Someone had replied there, under the username $1. And guess what the profile picture was? That cursed old hag's face with her trademark soul-eating stare and demented grin. Her reply said simply, "Oh, more evidence. Guess I'll have to destroy it." I clicked the reply button to respond, but it said that the thread never existed. Furthermore, when I searched the username $1, it said no such user ever existed. Weirdest of all, her join date had been 1928. That was 9 friggin' decades ago. The internet didn't even exist back then. Post 6. Posted September 1st, 2011. While on my friend's laptop, a dialog box suddenly appeared, prompting me to download $1.exe. Knowing this could only be more of the old hag's haunting, I cancelled the download. But guess what? It downloaded anyways. Ain't that just nifty? As soon as it finished downloading, it opened itself up. I prepared for the worst. Another computer-destroying virus? The old hag contained within a computer file? It opened. It was a game. A game. Of all the wretched things $1.exe could have been, it was just some sort of PC game. It showed a generic menu screen, with the buttons play, exit, and options. Background was a picture of a dollar bill. I clicked options, and just some graphics settings and such. I went back and clicked play, again preparing myself for the worst. It gave an instruction on screen how to play. Basically, the concept was that you were a bank robber, and in each level, you had to go through the obstacles to get to the bank and rob it. In each bank, you'd have to fight a boss, and if you beat the boss, you'd get the money. So, I played the game, with my friend and Coco watching anxiously. Unrelated again, my friend's name's Bill. It was a generic platform game, and I played through it easily. I beat 3 levels, and then the 4th one was the final one before I got to the first bank. I beat that level and fought the boss. The boss was some kind of banker with superpowers or something. It was a World 1 boss, so he was ridiculously easy to beat. I beat him by shooting me in the head with a pistol, and I got the money. The game counted out my scores and so forth before taking me to the first level of World 2. I figured I'd played enough, so I tried the exit window, but clicking the X only greeted me with the Windows error sound. It wanted me to keep playing, and judging by all the weird crap that had happened to me recently, the reasons can't be good. So, I tried ending the application with Task Manager, but the Unprocess button only gave me the error sound again. I tried shutting down, but the shutdown button gave me the same results. It was very similar to when $1.wav had first destroyed my old computer. Because the laptop was running on a battery, I had to take the battery out to shut it off. I put the battery back in, rebooted, and everything was normal again. I deleted $1.exe, but it didn't come back like $1.wav did. It stayed deleted. Post 7. Posted September 4th, 2011. More corner of my eye sightings of the old hag. In all of them, she's holding a bloody knife. Boarding up our doors and windows didn't seem to help. She still got into the house. Today, we unboarded the front door and go to get the Sunday paper. Even if we're hiding from a sadistic ghost woman who wants to kill us, still got to keep up on the news, right? It said that a banker had been found dead at a local bank, with a bullet wound in his forehead. It showed a picture of the man, and to our horror, he looked exactly like the World 1 boss from $1.exe. The way in which I'd defeated him had even been a pistol to the head, and the paper said that there was a bullet wound on his head. As I read the paper, I saw the old hag again out the corner of my eye, holding up a dead corpse under her arm that looked just like the banker. This time, I didn't focus on her. I focused on the paper, to see what would happen if I didn't make her disappear. If she tried to kill me or anything, I'd just look at her. She just kept standing there That demented smile and soul-eating stare. After a few moments, her smile began to fade and turn into a frown, as if she was disappointed that I didn't seem to notice her. I looked at Bill, and surprisingly, he had followed suit. Even Coco was pretending not to notice the hag. I turned back to the paper so I could continue seeing the hag out the corner of my eye. It wasn't easy, trying not to see something yet see it at the same time. I kept wanting to look, but I knew if I focused on her, she would disappear. I wanted to know what would happen if that didn't happen. Her disappointed expression then turned to a fierce and angry look. She raised the knife and lunged at me. In unison, me, Bill, and Coco all whirled around to face the ghost. She stopped abruptly just as she was about to reach us, then vanished. This raised yet another question. If she wants to kill us so badly, why didn't she just get it over with, instead of taunting us like this? Maybe she doesn't want to kill us. Maybe she just wants us to think she wants to kill us, make us paranoid to the point of insanity, just for her own sadistic pleasure and amusement. Sure wouldn't surprise me. Post 8. Posted September 5th, 2011. I woke up this morning from the little sleep that I actually got. I opened my eyes expecting to see the ceiling above me, but then I froze. Standing above me, looking down into my eyes with a soul-devouring stare and insane smile, was the hag. For several moments there was silence. I said nothing, for I was too afraid. I didn't move, didn't even breathe. My heart threatened to burst, it was pounding so hard. Then, the hag finally broke the silence. "Good morning, John," she said menacingly. It took all my courage to respond. "Just tell me what you want and I'll give it to you. Just leave me alone," I replied. "It's just so sad when you have to live under a curse. The curse of my own creation. Forced to pass on the curse to others. The curse of $1. Of greed. I never asked for this. But after having it shoved down my own throat so much, I've come to enjoy it. I'm not sure if it's my sanity that's been pushed by this, or what. But it comforts me to know others are feeling the same pain as me." "Enough of your cryptic crap," I yelled. And suddenly, Coco jumped out of nowhere and tackled the hag to the ground, growling furiously. The hag just smiled. "Go ahead. Do it. Rip me to bloody shreds. It might just be the only hope of destroying this horrid curse once and for all. Your suffering will be gone, and everyone who's ever fallen victim to greed's villainy." Before another word could be said, Coco began tearing that woman to bloody shreds. I never knew my dog could be so violent, but I honestly didn't care. If it meant the end of this terror that loomed over us, it was worth it. Me and Bill, who had been woken up by all the commotion, could only watch as the hag was torn apart. She didn't even scream. In fact, she smiled, as if saying, "Thank God it's finally over." And then, it was done. Her body was mangled and ripped so badly, you couldn't recognize her. Blood was splattered everywhere. Then the body, or the pieces of it anyway, began to shimmer and fade away. And then, they were gone. No trace of them remained, as if nothing had happened. Then we noticed a note laying on the floor where the hag had been. Bill picked it up and read aloud. "Destroy the dollars. Destroy the disc. Do it before the remnants of the curse that lie within them enslave you as it enslaved me." I instantly knew what I had to do. I found the wallet I used to keep all the dollars the hag had left me, and I lit a match to it. A blood-curdling scream of pain sounded from it. It almost made me jump out my skin. I threw it outside and burned it until there was nothing but ash and dust. Then, I found the disc containing $1.wav. I threw it to the ground and stomped on it. Another blood-curdling scream, and the disc spontaneously burst into flames. Now that's what I call burning a CD-ROM. It burned until it was nothing but a bunch of melted plastic. I had to use a shovel to scrape it off the ground and chuck it outside. For the rest of the day, nothing else happened. The hag never came back. Nothing. I think, at long last, this nightmare might be over. But I won't make assumptions too quickly. I'll wait a while, see if anything else comes up. If nothing else does, I guess it's safe to assume the haunting of $1.wav has ended. Post 9. Posted November 12, 2011. Well, I think I've waited long enough without anything happening that I can safely assume that this is all over. Me and Coco have moved back to our own house. Things seem to be returning to normal. And after some thinking, I think I've come up with a hypothesis as to what all this crap was about. I think the hag was forced by a curse to do those terrible things. The curse was like a virus, using her to spread to others. I guess $1.wav and all associated things are duplicates of this virus. I can only assume its proper name is greed, since that's what the hag kept referring to it as. How greed came to be, or what its purpose is, I can only wonder. But the hag seemed to hint that it was she who created it, and it was a screw-up that she made that caused all of this. I guess those dollars, the disc, and the hag were the last remnants of greed, and by destroying them, I destroyed greed forever. She was so anxious to get her hands on evidence and destroy it, because she wanted to destroy the curse of greed. I don't know whether any of these guesses are even remotely correct, but I don't really care. As long as this nightmare is over, I'm content with not knowing. And I'm pretty darn certain that it's finally over. You think so, huh? My name is Henry Goodman. Yes, I am related to John Goodman, the blogger that had a rather unpleasant experience with a file called $1.wav. I'm his brother. I'm the father of 3 kids and I have a wife whose name is Jenny Goodman. I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I'm here to tell you about a rather disturbing experience I had involving a used camcorder I got off eBay. It's strange. Both me and John's problems happened when we bought something off eBay. Anywho, on with my story. So, me and my family were planning a vacation, and we wanted to capture our trip on tape, as well as take some photos. Unfortunately, our video camera was broken, so we would either have to get a new one, or just take photos instead. So, I went on eBay to see if anybody was selling a camcorder. Well, long story short, I found one, I bid on it, and I won. A few days later, I received a small package which had the camcorder in it. I opened it up and took it out. It was the typical camcorder, with a small little screen on it and such. I had some blank Sony camcorder tapes, so I opened up the camcorder and put one inside. To my surprise, however, there was already a tape inside. I assumed it was one of the previous owner's ones that they forgot to take out. It was a used camcorder. I hope nothing important was on it, otherwise they'd be pretty upset about losing it. I took out the tape and had a look at it. There was a piece of yellow masking tape stuck on the front, labelled with black Sharpie. 2006. Just 2006, nothing else. I decided to play the tape, just to see what was on it. So I put the tape back in the camcorder, hooked up the camcorder to my TV to watch the tape. I rewound the tape, but it was already at the beginning. So I did the usual crap to play a tape from the camcorder. The tape started with a 10 seconds of a blank blue screen. Then it cut to someone filming a school playground on a cloudy day. Kids ran around and played, but whoever was filming seemed to be just interested in one of them. A little girl, probably around 5 years old, with pale skin, brown hair, brown eyes, and wearing a yellow coat. Whoever was filming seemed to be following her and watching her play. Sometimes the person filming would talk to the girl, and it was a man's voice. He called the girl Alice, and I assumed that the person filming was the girl's father. I assumed it must have been some home recording of our last day of school. So if that was a recording of the cameraman's daughter at the last day of school, it must have been important to him. I felt bad for him, losing something this precious. But I had little time to ponder that, because suddenly a very loud droning buzzing sound burst from the speakers, scaring the living crap out of me. The scenery had changed. It was now nighttime, and the school was deserted, except for the girl. All the while, that ear-piercing buzz continued to sound from the TV speakers. The girl was turned away from the camera, so I couldn't see her face. She just stood there, motionless. Then she turned to face the camera. And what I saw? Well, I didn't see that one coming. The girl's eyeballs? Gone. Just dark, empty sockets where they should have been. There wasn't blood or anything. The eyeballs were literally just gone. Her mouth was drooling some kind of disgusting green slime, and her nose was gone. Not like it was cut off, but just not there. Just plain skin where it should have been. Think of Patrick from SpongeBob. You get the idea. The scene then burst into static. The buzzing noise stopped, but you could hear the sound of knives slicing against flesh and blood-curdling screams. Then the scene returned, and the girl was hung by the swing in a swing set, with several nasty wounds around her body, and a bloody knife laying on the ground below her. Her eyeballs were still gone, and her mouth still dripped that weird green slime, and she still had no nose. The tape was silent. No loud buzzing or anything. Just silence as the girl dangled around, heart pounding so hard it threatened to burst. Scared out of my mind because the sudden buzzing sound, and to a lesser degree, the disturbing footage that accompanied it. I sprinted over to the TV and shut it off. I ejected tape from the camcorder, shut the camcorder off, and unhooked the TV from it. I took a hammer and smashed the tape into tiny pieces, breathing heavily, still not sure what the heck happened. I sat back down on the couch and just stayed there for a while, staring at the blank TV screen. After I finally calmed down, Jenny came home from the grocery store. I helped her bring the groceries in, but I didn't tell her about the tape, because she'd think I was going insane. The dream I had that night was not pleasant. I was in a dark hallway. My throat. It felt like someone was repeatedly flicking my Adam's apple. That loud buzzing from the tape played non-stop. It wasn't coming from any direction. It was just there, in my ears, as if I was wearing headphones, and the sound was playing on them. I was scared out of my mind. I wanted desperately to get out, to go home, to be in the comfort of my bed. I tried crying for help, but no matter how hard I tried, no sound would come out. Suddenly, I felt the urge to vomit. Not having a bucket or a toilet nearby, I puked on the floor, but instead of puke, I held up a small Sony videotape with masking tape on the front labelled 2006 in black Sharpie. Then, the tape morphed into a girl. No, not just any girl. It was the girl in the tape. Her eyeballs were gone, her mouth oozed green slime, and she had no nose. She slowly walked down the hallway. For some reason, I followed. All the while, that awful buzzing noise kept playing. She led me down the hallway and I realized where I was. I was in an elementary school. Kids' drawings and other art lined the walls. Posters saying, "Vote Josh for school president" were everywhere. You get the idea. She led me out of an open door and into the playground. It was the very same playground from the tape. And a man was there, holding a camcorder, recording us. But not just any camcorder. It was the very same camcorder that I'd gotten off eBay. He just stood there, recording us. The girl led me over to a swing set. She pulled a knife out of her pocket. My body then became frozen in place. I couldn't move my eyes. I couldn't move my head. I was forced to watch in horror as the girl sliced herself up with a knife, giving herself the same wounds as in the video. And the buzzing sound stopped, being replaced with the girl's blood-curdling screams of agony. She then put her neck into one of the swings, as if it was a noose. Then, the swing pulled up on its own accord, killing the girl. The girl dangled from the noose, just like in the video. After a few moments, I could move my body again. I sprinted over to the man holding the camcorder. He just looked at me and smiled. "That's my girl," he said. "I'm so proud." I jolted awake. My heart pounded, my forehead was sweaty, and I was breathing heavily. Jenny lay next to me, apparently still asleep. I sat there for a while, and finally calmed down. I laid back down and closed my eyes. I couldn't fall back to sleep though. My tossing and turning finally woke Jenny up, and she got mad and went back to sleep on the sofa. She opened the door, but then she froze. She just stood there. I could see her hands trembling. I asked her what was the matter. She just pointed a trembling finger out the door. I got out of bed and looked where she was pointing. My blood ran cold. There was a hallway outside the door, going out to the living room where the TV was. From down the hall, I could see the TV. It was on, and it was the little girl's face, missing eyeballs and all. But then I realized that the TV was in the corner of the room. I couldn't see where I was. My sleep-deprived brain mistook what I saw as the TV. But it wasn't the TV. It was the window. You were walking gingerly on the black-tinged shingles of your rooftop. You have a bird's-eye view of the neighborhood under the grey sky. The belligerent drunkard next door starts yelling about some music festival being held next month. Normally, this would be irritating, but you don't quite care right now. The scene fades. Opening your eyes slowly, you lift the thick bed sheets off yourself. The alarm you set last night has made your radio turn on. The DJ is announcing that there would be a contest for tickets to a music festival next month. You rise from your bed. It's 5 AM on Thursday, another weekday you'll spend at work. You go through the motions of getting ready to leave and walk out of the door to catch the city bus. 10 hours pass. You come home, exhausted as always. You throw yourself upon the sofa, and, lacking the energy to do anything else, you turn on the television and stare at it. You aren't really paying attention to what's on the broadcast though. You just stare at the screen and drift into catatonic state, thinking about things to which you're really rather indifferent. After hours of this, you opt to just go to bed. You're sitting up in bed. It's dark, but you can distinguish everything in the room with peculiar ease. You turn to the door leading to the hallway. In front of you, you see a mass of misshapen lines that look as though they were sloppily drawn and shaded in with a dull pencil, and it had just manifested themselves into the physical world instead of on paper where they seem to belong. The mass of lines shakes slightly as you stare at it for some time. It eventually twists into what appears to be a crude outline of a featureless man. As you look at the man, the area surrounding him shakes and twists violently. Your life has grown stale on you, hasn't it? Before you can reply, he seems to have read your mind for the answer. I have seen your previous dreams, and I know dreams become more realistic as one becomes tired of their world. I am the proprietor of my own world, you know. It's underpopulated, so I am lonely. You will never become bored again in my realm. Before you can object, the proprietor extends his arm towards you. holding out a hand as it all drifts into sheer darkness. You wake up and climb out of bed, disregarding the unusually eerie dream you had last night. You go through the motions of preparing for work again, when you stop in your tracks. Out of the corner of your eye, you think you saw something strange outside your window. You go over to it. What you find shakes you to the core, yet renders you motionless, petrified. The neighboring apartments, the trees outside, the sidewalks, and everything else has become abstract. And the whole world around you is in negative lights. There are no cars on the streets or pedestrians on the sidewalk. Only the warped versions of the surroundings you've grown accustomed to every day. You run outside desperately, hoping to see everything return to normal. Still though, the buildings are crooked, the sidewalks sloped, and the whole world is in reverse polarities, with not a single other person around to be horrified with you. No one else. I have to face this messed up world alone. This is not my home. This is hell. You gasp, dropping to your knees, in the middle of the road in front of your house, under the pitch black sky. You correct yourself thinking, no, this is not hell. This is beyond hell. This isn't a nightmarish place completely unfamiliar to me, where suffering is inflicted by physical agony and constantly enforced tolling. This is a place that was once my home, made nightmarish by having been warped into something completely perverse and unnatural. And the suffering is complete desolation. The proprietor materializes to your left. Indecisive human, you deride my world and yearn for the world which you claim to have grown tired. He stands there for a long time, appearing to be glaring at you, until he stretches out an arm in your direction. Two beings, similar to the proprietor in their rudimentary sketch-like faceless form, appear out of nowhere, lift you up, and carry you away. Now you sit in a small, empty corridor, immobilized by wrappings like those of a mummy, with one of those heinous, abstract, featureless figures appearing before you every now and then, scratching notes as it watches you from behind a door, while apparently unheard. You try to reason with it, pleading to have your world back. Looks like this is it. There's a sandstorm outside right now. With only one of the battery packs still intact, I don't really have a whole lot of a chance of getting out of this one. The few solar panels that are still functional aren't even working at a tenth of their capacity, so they're not resupplying energy anywhere near as fast as the life support's burning it. Even with only me left here, the system's estimating that it'll take about 3 days for the power to run out. And then, there'll be no air circulation. No circulation means that carbon dioxide is going to build up since the atmosphere can't reach the scrubbers, and I'll suffocate in the air that I exhale. Or I mean, I would, if I didn't have enough oxycodone in the medbay to kill a small elephant. Let's face it though, even if this storm's a short one, I'm not going to last long anyway. Water's not really a problem, and there's a little bit of food left, since Edmund's kept an emergency supply outside of the kitchen in case there was a crisis and we needed to wait for extraction. Only problem with that is that there's not going to be any extraction at this point. The lander was made for 4 people, so I can't operate on my own. And even if I could, it would just get me up to the orbiter, which I haven't seen in weeks. I'm pretty sure that it collided with one of the dust bunnies up there above the atmosphere. So, I'd like to use what little energy this place has left to send one last message. As best as I can tell, no one on Earth is listening. So I've overridden the normal operating procedures for the antenna. I swiveled and pointed it at Jalise 5b. I know we're not supposed to send signals out to planets that we might think be inhabited, but I don't see a problem with it just now. After that, I might take one last stroll around the base. Go to pet the dust bunny, maybe, if it doesn't seem to mind. And it never does. Then, I'll say goodnight and check out on my own time. If anyone receives this message and actually knows how to read it. My name's Janet Dawson. I was the second human being to set foot on Mars, right after Edmonds and before Johnston. The fucking arsehole who blew up our batteries. Sarah Edmonds was the head of Team 1. Carl Johnston and I were the team geologists. And Daniel Reed was our medical professional on site. Also, he was the first person to die on Mars, for what it's worth. Team 2 never got their chance to land, which they would have taken 3 months down the road had everything gone according to plan. The 4 of us had been working down here for about a month when the news came in from NASA that Neptune was gone. News like that takes a minute's process, and we weren't sure at first whether it was a joke or if there might have been some sort of miscommunication. Nope. The outermost ice giant in our solar system was just not there anymore. It happened a week before, but the decision was made to censor our communications until they could come up with a way to let us know. Its moons had also vanished, the day after Neptune itself. And their place was a whole lot of nothing. The JAXA NASA orbiter at Uranus wasn't really made to look into things that distant, but they did try to turn it to see if there was anything noticeable that the telescopes on Earth's orbit and the ones in the deep space station around the moon might have missed. There wasn't. Obviously, people got a little concerned when they realized what had happened. It was virtually impossible to keep it a secret for any length of time though. Attempts were made to see if anything had happened to Kronos, the only planet further out than Neptune. But, with this orbit out in the Kuiper belt, approaching Aphelion and its dark surface blending in with the space between stars, it can be hard to find even under normal circumstances. Didn't stop people from concluding that it was gone too though. Real panic wasn't setting in yet, but there was a kind of unnameable terror. From what we could tell once we started getting uncensored news again, suicides went up globally. There was also a serious increase in terrorist attacks from apocalyptic fundamentalists. Someone even tried to set up a bomb in the basement of the Burj Khalifa. They were stopped, but an attempt to level the world's second tallest building draws in a lot of attention. And for about another week, that was it. Neptune continued to not exist. Scientists finally found Kronos again, along with the other known large Kuiper belt objects. So there was some relief. Maybe this wasn't as dangerous as it seemed. But holy shit did it seem dangerous. Then Uranus disappeared. With the disappearance of the second planet, we were told immediately. I guess Mission Control decided that hiding what happened was pointless, since we'd have to find out sooner or later. What they didn't tell us until later in the day was that this time, there had been photographs. The satellite in orbit around the planet managed to send back 3 full-color digital images before it lost contact with the Earth, and all of them were horrifying. In all 3, you could see columns of pale blue clouds rising from the Uranus atmosphere and curling in spirals. It looked like there were hundreds of those, kind of like waterfalls but in reverse. The last photo returned was taken close to one, with the end of its spiral silhouetted against the darkness of space. Toward the end, the pale blue turned to a tan, and at the end of the column, there was almost an imperceptibly small dot, like a grain of sand. Martial law was declared in pretty much every country that could enforce it. This time, the reaction wasn't unspoken fear, but instead was raw terror. Whatever was out there, it was eating worlds, and it was on its way towards the Earth. States without the capability relied on UN or regional peacekeepers. that really wasn't enough. The result was civil war. Not war with any real goal, just the reaction of people trapped with nowhere to run. Where the police and military could stop the riots before they got that bad, they first used batons, then tear gas, then beanbag shotguns, then, finally, machine gun fire. Death tolls globally escalated into the thousands. We were offered the option of going back to the Earth. It was late evening here in the Eridania lake bed, and we sat around the aluminium table in the dining room, discussing the pros and cons of heading up the orbiting command and leaving for home. Families, friends, all those people we had left behind. But we all knew the unfortunate truth, and Edmonds was the first person to voice it. If whatever this was got from Neptune to Uranus in 2 weeks, then leaving the surface just meant that we would die floating through an empty sky. Any chance of returning to our loved ones was already gone. That wasn't our stated reason, of course. We said that we wanted to continue the mission to keep hope alive, and who knew, maybe Uranus would be the last planet they consumed. It wasn't. The dream started too, on the day when they ate Saturn. Before we realized what had happened, enormous voids opened up in our minds and filled themselves with green and black fractal patterns. Time didn't move as it should have. The immense scale of both the time and space in that place was disconcerting. And the first night, it felt like I spent years asleep. I remember waking up, groggy and still uneasy, getting some cheap knockoff coffee from the kitchen, and moving to the main room to sit down and read any messages that might have come on my tablet. Daniel walked in, told me that I looked like shit, and then asked with a note of concern whether I had any unusual dreams. I thought at first that he was just worried about my mental state because, yeah, I look pretty much like shit. Then it dawned on me. The look on his pale, tired face was something else entirely. After we realized that we all had the same dream, we got into the stimulant stash and started popping modafinil like candy. We were wired up like Christmas lights in hell by the time we got a call to let us know what had happened to Saturn. It took things a little over an hour to eat Saturn, and this time, it was visible through near real-time streaming thanks to the powerful telescopes at the Deep Space Station. Its rings were gone too quickly to see what happened to them. But the planet itself died slowly. The columns curled out from the planet, first smooth like the ones photographed at Uranus, then developing a stranger texture as the material from the depths of the gas giant started to dredge up. Freed from the pressure of the world's depths, they exploded outward, then collapsed in again, as they turned from their own strange colours back to something almost like the long-vanished outer atmosphere. In orbit around Saturn, the ESA's Herschel probe and NASA's own Saturn Next also returned images before dying. Saturn Next didn't really get anything better than the photos from the Uranus orbiter, but its eccentric orbit gave it nearly 10 minutes of time to see what was going on. Herschel, on the other hand, returned only one photo, but it was worth 1,000 from a greater distance. At the end of a long curving tendril of planetary material was the first dust bunny that any human being ever saw close up. It really did kind of look like a rabbit made of sand, hence the name given to them by yours truly, after the shit hit the fan and I was alone to call them whatever I wanted. Of course, it was really more of a blob, but it had 2 long floppy ears, noticeable even in the grainy pixelated image. At the time, we weren't sure whether these were just a brief shape that the object took on, although now, I can assure you that they're permanent. In person, it's actually kind of cute. Well, kind of like someone tried to make a Shoggoth look cute, but you take what you can get. They settle down when they're on a planet, but in orbit, they just flop around as the bunny moves. I I might have started mixing the modafinil and some other stimulants with the painkillers I mentioned earlier. Don't judge me. After those images came back, martial law pretty much went to shit. People started to desert from the military in droves, just wanting to see their families, and chaos took over. By that point, I'm pretty sure that the people back home were having the dreams too. It's hard to say with the attempts at media censorship, but between the news anchors trying to fake optimism while still saying goodbye, there were a few hints. A news anchor who had been escorted off the set because he couldn't stop crying, a rioter with a revolver wearing a hooded sweater and firing up into the sky before he turned it on himself and screamed that they would never take him. A brief image of a woman in a crowd who looked like she fell asleep on her feet for a moment, then woke up with an expression that I'd never seen before in my life. It took maybe 2 days for society to begin to collapse. We all called home that night to leave a message for our loved ones because of an unexpected communication shutdown, except for me. I didn't really have anyone to talk to. An ex-husband, yeah, but no one else, since my family died years ago when Mega Typhoon Dim hit their vacation home in Okinawa, and so I made the executive decision not to let what was almost certainly going to be one of my last few days go to waste contacting that asshat. It took a while for it to sink in that my life was now probably going to be measured in days or weeks at most. That the life of the entire human race wouldn't go on for much longer. Even with the stimulants, you can't stay awake forever. And as soon as the communications cut off, almost immediately after Daniel sent his last message to his wife and daughter in Tallahassee, now think about it, we all went back to bed. Somehow, I think we knew that everything would change after that, and that maybe we'd be ready for it if we experienced it together, instead of alone when we could no longer avoid the inevitable. We weren't so lucky. The dreams did come back, except now, they felt even longer, even more hopeless and lonely. Being together in that green and black darkness is impossible. It took us all about 2 hours to wake up from our dreams, but I was honestly confused about where I was. My memories were foggy. Like the moment when I closed my eyes had happened a decade or more ago. None of us really spoke about it. Really, we didn't speak much to each other at all when we woke, at roughly the same time. I did the only thing that I knew to do. I went to the damned lab, and I stared at rocks for hours like I was still working, even though all communication had been severed not long before. The lack of sleep, combined with the potent pharmaceuticals, helped with that. The sun was going down, and the sky was stained pale blue when I heard Johnson screaming. He was in the main room, howling in terror and anger. For a while, I thought about just staying in the lab, but then it hit me that helping someone in obvious distress was just the humane thing to do. Still, I didn't exactly run to see what was up, because I was sure that it was going to be bad. My intuition wasn't off. It really was fucking terrible. There was a hell of a lot of blood, and that was just the first thing I noticed. The couch was covered in it, with green and yellow carpet was stained red. Johnston was busy ripping the television off the wall when I first turned to the corner, but it only took him a second to get it down. Then he picked the kitchen knife back up off the floor. There wasn't really a lot of clothing left on him at that point. Just his pants, and the tattered remains of his shirt. Under that shirt, there really wasn't a lot of skin left either. Honestly, I can't know what he saw. I think he drifted off to sleep on the couch, and if he did, at that point, who knows what he went through. It's hard not to judge him after everything, but the look on his face was just raw terror. His eyes were huge, his mouth hanging open, his cheeks stained with both his own blood and the tracks of tears. "They did it," he said. They got Jupiter. I watched them do it. I watched them eat it. Can you imagine? Can you just Imagine being in one of those columns. Damn it, I saw it, Katie, I saw it. The ridges of clouds. Just they... Katie, holy fuck, Katie. Johnson's daughter was named Katie. I remember that much. She was about my age, even though he didn't look old enough to even have a daughter who was nearly in middle age herself. Johnston, there's no way you could know that. I told him, a desperate lie. There's no news coming in. We watched the line cut off together. How would you know that what you just said was true? Katie, he said, again and again. Katie, Katie, Katie. Oh my god. They're not even gonna kill us, Katie. It's only gonna take a little while now. And they're gonna be here in Long Beach. And they're gonna take us up. It's hell in there. I think that I made a move forward, my arms outstretched. I'm not actually sure if I actually took a step though. That kitchen knife, dulled nearly black with Johnson's blood, moved up to his neck. If nothing had happened, I'm pretty sure he would have just cut it though. Unfortunately for everyone, Daniel chose that moment to arrive from the opposite end of the base, coming out the corridor and into the main room beside him. He had time to say something. Maybe, what the hell? Johnson stabbed through Daniel's chest in one fast move, his knife going through the doctor's sternum. The two were locked together for an instant that lasted forever, almost like a hug. Someone was screaming, but it wasn't either of them. It had to be me, but I don't feel like I was really there at that moment. The two crumpled to the floor, and I remember sobbing. That noise, I know, wasn't coming from me. Almost definitely, it was Johnston. Daniel was already unconscious. The precious fluid that kept his body moving was leaking onto the floor in a puddle. Edmonds came in from the same direction as Daniel, running into the room. She gave a confused, horrified glance around before Johnson shoved her out of the way and ran down the hall. He was screaming again now, racing faster than someone in his physical state had any right to, trailing blood and flesh like breadcrumbs. Neither of us was really sure what to do. We stared in horror down the hallway as he ran towards storage rooms, the maintenance, and the airlock. Then Edmonds broke the silence. We need the gun. Firing a weapon in a sealed tube in a near vacuum is always a risky prospect. But being unarmed is also pretty horrifying. The idea of someone completely losing it on a 2-year, 8-person mission to Mars had been discussed, and eventually it was decided that a specially designed compressed air firearm, deliberately set up to kill or incapacitate a human, but to be too weak to easily puncture through the outer shell of the facility, was pretty much a necessity in case all other means failed, or if the person managed to arm himself or herself after their breakdown. There was no guarantee that it would kill, or that it would absolutely wouldn't punch hole, but it would definitely stop someone who needed to be stopped. Now, Edmonds and I were running down the hallway to the right of the main room, toward the dormitory and the locked box under the captain's bunk where she kept the pistol. We got to her private room. She pulled the small grey metal case out and started fumbling with her keyring. The whole time, I stood at the door, looking back through the 15 feet between where we were and the main room, just in case Johnson decided to wheel around and come back. She had the box open, had pulled the pistol and ammunition out of their egg crate packaging, and was putting bullets into the chamber when we heard the explosion and the lights went out. The Mars base is damn small. It only took Johnson a few minutes to get to the maintenance room, about the same time that it took us to get to the captain's quarters. There were a few controls in place to keep someone from accidentally damaging the main batteries. Those enormous black rectangles lined up in a deep closet off from the maintenance room. What Johnson did wasn't accidental. I can't really tell you much about the chemistry of the batteries here, but I assumed that they contained something that didn't play nice with oxygen. I also can't tell you what Johnson saw when he closed his eyes in the main room. Whatever it was, he couldn't get it out of his head until he punched a hole in one of those electrical monoliths with something. Not the knife, it was still in the main room, lodged in Daniel's chest. The maintenance room was wiped out entirely by the blast. It was a minor miracle that the backup battery in the lander, located off to the left of the main room and only about 30 feet away from maintenance, survived. It didn't even have to kick off to seal the maintenance off from the rest of the base, because the emergency hatches in the base have their own backup supply. But we wouldn't have been able to leave the dormitory if it hadn't. All of the safety seals had locked tight in a fraction of a second, and they needed that power supply to function. As soon as the shock wore off, and as soon as the red emergency lights kicked on so that we weren't relying entirely on light streaming in through the narrow windows, Edmonds finished loading the gun. She looked at me and asked, "You think that's what that sounded like?" I nodded. There really wasn't a lot else that it could have been. We still took the gun with us on our way towards maintenance. The sealed hallway leading to the main room required an approval code to open, and it took us more than a minute to figure it out through trial and error, inputting all the codes that we never expected to use. Then, the door that actually opened to the main room needed the same. All of them required the same code though. This time, it took just long enough for Edmonds to enter the password with her free hand shaking violently. The main room looked like something out of a horror movie. The television sat propped up against the love seat, its screen broken. The adjacent couch was ripped to shreds. The sheer volume of blood was worse than I had remembered. It was hard to tell in the harsh red light where the blood ended and the normal colour of the carpet began. I walked over to Daniel's body and checked briefly for a pulse, the thought occurring to me that we really should have done that before running to get the gun. Oh well. There wasn't one. And there had been no reason to think that there would have been only a few minutes earlier. A few minutes that felt like an eternity, but still, only a few minutes. The hatch leading to the maintenance corridor was firmly closed, and the readouts on the panel showed that the atmosphere on the other side was dangerously thin. It would be about 2 hours before we'd be able to go outside and check to make sure of what we already knew. And when we did, we found that the maintenance room was pretty much gone. There were pieces left from Johnson's body, but they stood out harshly in the darkness of the Martian night, silhouetted by our circles of artificial light. High above, where Jupiter should have been, there was only the yawning blackness of the Milky Way abyss. We weren't able to bury Daniel, but we took him out there onto the surface, wrapped in a funeral shroud made from bedsheet. It was all that we could do. In the eternal silence and cold of the dead world we have come to explore, Edmonds told me goodbye. I didn't even have time to react before she took off her helmet and rapidly fell to the ground. I could probably have taken her back into the base. Could probably have kept her alive. I didn't, because there was no point. Later on, I brought a shroud out for her too, along with the useless gun. Edmonds hadn't trusted it to end her life if she fired it, and neither did I. More likely, it would just break bones and cause pain if someone tried to swallow it. The orbiter did a flyover of the base only once every few days. On its next pass, I made contact using the local antenna. Apparently, they'd also had a catastrophe. Team 2 was comprised of Margaret Green, Tommy Whitefield, Brandon Densmore, and Tracy Lee when we set out from Earth. Now, Margaret Green was gone. She had died in her sleep, the victim of a heart attack. The others had given her a similar funeral to the one we'd given Daniel, evacuating her body through the airlock. The whole process had been a mess, with her corpse getting snagged on the rim of the hatch on the way out. An EVA had to be carried out to free her body and let it drift, revealing that her lower arm had been nearly severed by the sharp metal of the hatch. That last jar sent it free, and she went into orbit around Mars in 2 pieces. None of the others spoke openly about joining her outside the ship, but it was pretty obvious what was coming. We talked for a while. Had the orbiter's stronger antenna picked up any signals from Earth? Yes. But nothing strong or directed. Nothing that could really be useful. A few words in Arabic maybe? Unintelligible to the crew, and broken up by radio static. Had they seen whether Jupiter might still be out there somehow? No. It was gone. The ship passed over the horizon, and then forever, it was gone. Eventually I fell asleep at the pile of communications equipment in the dormitory. In that red-tinged darkness, I dreamed about my childhood in Detroit, about the sunrise over the lake, about long winters with heavy snow, and about hot chocolate with my mother. Warm drinks from a ceramic mug, and tiny little marshmallows. My first dog, her life and her death all too soon. About something that wasn't a dog and wasn't a cat, but that looked a little like both. Something that looked at me with an expression that wasn't even close to human, from a face nearly a foot long and far too large for its small frame, with black pits instead of eyes, but that was somehow pitiable and apologetic. It had 5 tails, ending with vast fans of digits, and they all hung down to the ground. The thing slid towards me, like something somewhere between a cat and a weasel, and rubbed against my legs in a way that was distinctly feline. Not purring, but making a rapid clicking sound. A sound that I could understand, that I knew was coming across vast gulfs of not only space, but of time. From something that had been dead for years when the dinosaurs first walked the earth, born in the light of a sun that had burnt out before ours began to shine. It was saying that things were never meant to end this way for us, that mistakes had been made, that it, and others of its kind, if there really were others in the proper sense, this creature seemed only to be part of a vast whole, were sorry. I'm not sure how long I slept. I could have checked, but if it's not obvious, I've completely lost track of time, and so that wouldn't have been very useful. Maybe more than a day. What woke me though was more important. Outside, something thudded to the ground. I thought that maybe it was the lander, toppled over somehow from its vertical position. It took only a minute and a quick glance out the high window above the communications equipment to see how wrong I was. There was no way to know why the enormous thing outside of the base decided to stop here. I can't even begin to guess what it came here for. Like an amoeba made of dirt, with rabbit ears dangling down its side. It sat there, pulsating. In the distance, I could see others falling from the sky, like a strange hailstorm. From its base, I watched its roots extend out from the dust bunny. They burrowed into the red dirt, and the thing began to make rapid clicking noises, similar to the animal that had visited my dream, but at a radically different pitch. I've made a few trips out to see it, carefully bypassing where Daniel and Edmonds lay still on the Martian ground. Wherever it and its brethren are, they stopped here on Mars. I can't say whether more went to land on Earth, but at night, I can still see Earth and its moon. Neither is broadcasting now. Phobos and Deimos are still up there, and looking at them through the telescope in the lab, I can see tiny brown dots on both. In the dark, the blobs glow faintly blue, both here and on the night side of the moons. There's almost no chance that I'm the last human being left, but I doubt there's any chance that humanity will bounce back from this. With the outer planets gone, it's hard to say what exactly is going to happen in the future, but I do know that I won't be alive to see it. No one is coming here for me. I'm alone, and I'm going to die. So, consider this a warning and a goodbye. If this happens to you, maybe you'll fare better. And if not, who knows? I have a feeling now that there's a sort of life after death, even if it isn't the kind that we used to expect. Maybe I'll see you on the other side. Thank you for sticking around to the end. If you enjoyed today's story, don't forget to leave a like. And if you want to hear more stories like it, Don't forget to subscribe and click that bell icon. That way you'll never miss a story. Oh, and if you haven't already, don't forget to follow me on Twitter so you can keep up with the latest goings on the channel.